We are really thrilled that you have all decided to join us tonight for this fantastic event that we're calling How We Design for Fast Times. Our moderator this evening is Paul Makovsky, who probably does not need an introduction, but he's the Vice President of Design at Metropolis magazine. He's going to moderate a conversation with 4 client and design teams from different sectors tonight. Those cover the startup, nonprofit, financial, and education sectors. So we are thrilled to have the various teams here tonight. The way it's going to work is each team will come up for a few minutes, 15, 20 minutes, discuss their projects, challenges, especially in light of the fast-paced office today, as well as some of the speed required to get those offices up and running. And then after each session, we're going to allow you some questions and answers for each.
All right. So the way that we structured this panel is actually in 4 groupings, and we're going to kind of go through this rather quickly because we have 4 projects really to be talking about. The first one, and the great thing too, is we have this whiteboard here where you can see everyone's name and the proper spelling of their name because we might be pronouncing them the wrong way. One of the first things that I just want to mention at Metropolis magazine is we're always thinking about how the workplace is constantly evolving. And when we were putting this panel together, I started looking at some statistics. And there was a study that said, and I have the notes here, 50 years ago, the average lifespan of a Fortune 500 company was 61 years. And that's when you had a job for life, if you remember that. But by 2010, that dropped down to 18 years. And then another more recent study has now put that number at 10 years. And then an even more recent study has figured out that the average life of a CEO now is just 3 years for a company. So we are designing for fast times, and that was how we came up with this panel discussion. I'm hearing of companies having shorter lead times, designers telling me that their project deadlines are getting tighter. Everyone is being squeezed, but yet being told that they have to design fantastic projects for fantastic clients. Of course, technology, new technology is a big factor. Competition and disruption is also added into that in terms of how we're really changing how we live and work. So we're going to look at some of the questions about designing for fast times through the lenses of these partnerships. And one of the first partnerships that we're talking about is between Float Studio and Food 52. You guys all know Food 52, I hope? Okay. Maybe Amanda, do you want to give like the 30-second intro in terms of what Food 52 does?
Sure. We're a kitchen and home company, and we help you in every aspect of your kitchen and home life, and whether that might mean, inspiration, it might mean connecting you with other like-minded cooks, it might mean, helping you figure out what you're going to cook for dinner, helping you discover great new tableware and cookware, and so we also we have a podcast, we have a line of cookbooks, and we also do pop-ups and a lot of events.
And Amanda, you started off, let's say, in the traditional world of journalism, yes. As a writer, a successful one working for the New York Times.
So I worked in a cubicle for 11 years at the New York Times. I was very pleased when they had Renzo Piano design their new building, but unfortunately I only worked there for like 2 years during that, but it was lovely and made a huge difference.
And you did a couple cookbooks, including a bestseller for the New York Times.
Yeah,
it was the New York Times bestseller about...
The Essential New York Times Cookbook. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
So what gave you the inspiration to start this company?
So my co-founder Meryl and I, at its most basic, we started the company because we, as passionate home cooks and people who really cared about their home, didn't feel like we were being served well. It seemed crazy to us that at a time when in our culture food was becoming so important, there wasn't one place where we could be inspired and like learn things and kind of just get everything that we needed. And the beauty of the internet is that you can bring all of these things together. And so we decided to create this world and try to serve people in the best possible way and be very inclusive. So if you've never boiled water, you would feel welcome, and if you were doing sous vide, you would also feel welcome. And so off we went, and it's really resonated with people. So.
And how did the collaboration with Float Studio come about?
Well, so, when you start a company, we started actually in my kitchen, and we used to photograph all the pictures on our site in my bedroom, and we worked out of Morandi. Actually, that was what we considered our office, and then we grew up and we went to one co-working space, and then we went to another one called General Assembly. And there was this amazing guy who worked at the front and who would like fix the computer screen and like help us get a conference room. And we were actually kind of getting kicked out of General Assembly because we were too large, and we were moving into a new space. We had rented it and realized like we have to build a kitchen. We need design help. We don't know anyone, and Brad caught wind of this, and Brad had really deep design experience. He was working at General's. I'll let you explain, but my co-founder cut her finger and needed a Band-Aid, so she was like, "Hey, Brad, can I have a Band-Aid?" And Brad was like, "You can have a Band-Aid, and I also heard that you guys are moving into a new office." And perhaps
Brad works fast.
You would need some help because I've got a lot of design experience, and we loved Brad already. So this was like very exciting development. And maybe you want to tell there.
Yeah. So I met with Amanda Merrill. I was like, "Listen, I can build out your office and design it for $25 an hour." I gave them like a basic breakdown and how I could do this.
We're sorry.
Yeah. This was 5 years ago.
Inflation.
And I'd come from designing offices for a company called TerraCycle, which is a company that makes products out of waste in New Jersey. And my job while I was there for 2.5 years was building the products, the furniture, kind of the entire site in Trenton, putting it in a container and then shipping it wherever the next site was going to be, and then going there and installing it for 2 weeks. So that's a company that makes products out of waste. So my background is really designing spaces and products out of trash. So I kind of learned to be very resourceful in that respect, and had this.
And sustainability is a big part of
Sustainability is definitely a really big part. And kind of learned. I mean, we approach every project from a reuse perspective, and are always trying to be as sustainable as possible. It's kind of just it's common sense to us. But when I talked to Amanda Merrill, I was like, "Listen, my portfolio is insane. It's not going to make any sense with your refined, sophisticated aesthetic. But trust me, I can help you translate your brand into your space and help you prioritize your goals." Because I think a lot of people, especially when they're aging out of this co-working model, are completely daunted by the prospect of building out their first space. They're going to traditional firms and getting insane quotes for something that doesn't feel like them. And the priorities nowadays are not only to kind of attract the best young talent, but use their space to advertise their product. So understanding that and meeting all of these people that have this need is kind of where the business was born. And shortly after met Nina, and we formed this thing where we help startups create spaces, get a lot more for a lot less. I think that model has changed a little bit as construction costs are pretty much fixed. But I think early on, working with people that have really tight budgets and understanding what their goals are helped us form a business that targeted startups.
So, Nina, is this the space of, and when was it done?
It was completed in 2015.
There's a couple different spaces shown
Yeah.
here. We've done 3 spaces for Food 52.
This right here, it's scrolling. So the more streamlined looking kitchen we just finished about a month ago. They're right around the corner. We finished the majority of the office, which is the 5,000 square foot portion, 2.5-3 years ago. And then this is the new video kitchen and annex that we finished just a couple of months ago.
And so I guess this is a relationship that you've had over a couple years, and the company has been obviously growing and growing. how do you deal with this?
Then our
Yeah.
second main office, and then as we've added more spaces.
I just want to say we did their first office, which was 2,500 square feet with $25,000. That included a brand new kitchen, 2 bathrooms, seating for 20, and 2 lounge areas. It was a test. It was insane.
Yeah.
And what was the big challenge, I guess, as a company? Can you maybe talk about the evolution of how your company has grown? Because it just seems like it's so robust and it is always growing.
Yeah, and you mean in relationship to like how we've designed the office?
Yeah.
So, I think that Brad and Nina really showed us like that how important it is that that every inch of the office like reflects our brand. We're a lifestyle brand, and like it's our aesthetic and is very much like our point of view on the world. And so, when we got this bigger space, and we were, it was a much more kind of ambitious project, and I think they just like understanding that really kind of transformed. It actually had a huge effect on our business, which we didn't understand. We
And
initially,
this is a good thing.
it's
right?
a great thing.
Yeah.
So we got into the space, and we wanted it to be. I mean, selfishly, we wanted a cozy office, and I think, and we wanted a space that like we felt reflected our values, like. Transparency is a big thing. So there are no all the windows are open, and like all the workspaces are open. There's really there's no place to hide, and that's intentional. And so we we wanted a space that was functional, but also reflected our values, but also was really cozy, because we didn't want to, we wanted a place that we were excited to go and work at, and because we're so much about the kitchen and home, we wanted it to feel like a home. But it turns out, so that's the way we designed it. But I think that what you guys saw was that this would have this really big impact on anyone who visited. And when you're our kind of company, like it's when you open the elevator door opens, you're like in our space, right? There's no interruption. And I mean, the number of it just made so many conversations, whether they were like partnerships or ad sales deals or, a merchant that we work with in our shop. If they come to our space, they instantly like get who we are and what we do, and it feels there's this very clear connection between what our website looks like and everything that we do and our space. I think that we've closed a lot of business because of it, and it's. Yeah, anyway, it's had a really deep impact, and I think it's now ingrained in kind of who we are as a company, that like we need to be in a space that feels like inspiring, that feels connected to our values and who we are.
I think what's also very interesting here is it is a workplace, but it looks very homey.
Yeah.
And yet, what is the challenge as designers? Because you can go to some of these big brands and they are selling office systems. How do you translate this kind of homey feeling in terms of how you specified the furniture?
I think that a big thing to understand about us is that we didn't actually we never worked in a traditional commercial design setting. I worked in high-end residential design before Brad and I partnered together, so it's not as if we learned it one way and then had to veer to adapt what we thought our clients would like. It's always just been the way we have sourced and designed. So rather than saying we're going to be sourcing 14 lounge areas and 10 conference rooms, so we need lounge type A, conference type B, we've intuitively viewed each space as a room, not a type. So that said, we're used to sourcing across a lot of different manufacturers, not necessarily picking one person and then rolling with them throughout, and pulling from some residential sources, which can be tricky because obviously quality is different, customer service is different, and the entire interaction is not necessarily as consistent or dependable. But we've definitely figured out ways to incorporate that in that stands the test of time as you said earlier, a smaller timeline than was the expectation in the past, and feels a little bit looser and more organic.
And I mean, not just Food 52 that you've worked with, but you've done a number of startups like the Offices for Casper and Elysium, the anti-aging kind of serum. How do you find, if there's one thing for designing for fast times, what is it that you do that makes your client happy?
Well, I think it's especially for a smaller company that you're dealing directly with the founders. Trying to put them at ease throughout the process is so important, and that has been a major learning curve for us over the past few years. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of unknowns, and some of the founders that we deal with are 25 years old and have never bought a coffee table for themselves, never mind manage a 34,000 square foot build out. So communication and really clear, transparent communication, and setting realistic expectations as best as we can, and trying to learn our lesson and say, you can't build 30,000 square feet in a month. No, you just can't. Which we've said that before, and then we had to eat our words. So
I feel like you should tell the story of our move and like the obstacles and how it affected the timeline.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, like when you're building out, well, first of all, the only way we've kind of learned how to design is fast, because we started with startup clients. You know, the stakes are really high in New York with real estate prices being very high, and you know, every kind of day counts in the startup world. So that's kind of how we have been trained as designers. But in Amanda's case, we had a space. Their lease was coming up in the space by Madison Square Garden, and their lease had started, and the company that was in there before them hadn't moved out, and didn't have plans to move out for 3 months. And it was extremely problematic because there were a lot of partnerships deals riding on this brand new test kitchen getting built out, and also they needed to start moving their team in. So as a solve, we somehow got the existing tenant to agree to let us put up walls in the space and start construction while they were still working there. And this went on for like 6 weeks. It was a complete mess. It was one of the most insane things we've ever done, to have a complete construction scope happening while a functioning company is existing in the space. But we got the kitchen done. We shot it. The partnership deal happened. And that deal is what afforded them to build out the rest of the space. So had that not happened, this space wouldn't have been a realistic endeavor for them. So we had to make it work, and whatever it took, it
And then the timeline for us to actually move into the space got much shortened, and
Right.
in 5 weeks you renovated the rest of the space.
it was a complete gut. It was a wild experience, and one of the things that helped us through it was actually Amanda and Meryl. And Amanda specifically, I have images on my phone of her passed out in the construction site, like sleeping there, because we like basically lived on site to get this thing done. It was
yeah, we had reused the plastic windows from the old conference rooms, and towards the end we had the entire Food 52 team polishing them with toothpaste to get the buffer marks at the end. It was a whole team event. It was really amazing though, because by the time we moved in, everybody on your team at that point was super
involved.
connected to the project.
We have time for one question from the audience, and then we move on to our next group. Fellow. Okay. So basically, how do you build in growth for 5 to 10 years, when you're a startup, and how do you think about the future?
None of our clients are actually ever thinking on a 10-year timeline, realistically. They're thinking in 1 to 3 year increments maximum. So that's
Very fast.
very fast.
So
Yeah.
this past weekend, you guys finished another space in the building for us, and I told them today that we need to think about another space. like, because that's sort of, we're just like sort of dealing with things as they come. I mean,
This is the nature of your business.
yeah, I mean, it would be great if we could plan ahead, but we don't have those kinds of resources, and so we have to kind of be responsive in the moment.
We usually find that our clients are actually really, really understandably hesitant to make an extreme real estate commitment like that, because you're jinxing your future in a way. You're assuming that the next 3 rounds of funding are going to go the way that you hope they're going to go. So
Also, companies need to show profitability before they can justify that spend.
Yeah.
So it's
that, but that said, we do build in growth plans always. And what
Always.
we'll do is we will create the entire floor layout and usually select soft seating areas that we can pull out. We essentially decide the places that you can live without to avoid the tethering of an IKEA table onto the end of desks, which everybody hates seeing in the tight times.
Great. Group number 2, which is a partnership between Method and the Robin Hood Foundation. Maybe if, Demetrios, can you maybe talk about Method in just 30 seconds, about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, Method Design, we've been around for about 10 years. We're a somewhat traditional architecture and design firm. We design all types of spaces. We're not just in the nonprofits kind of sector, but actually we built a set of services that are kind of pre and post what would be traditionally an architectural services setup, specifically for the work that we do for Robin Hood. And that's informed this really interesting process that we've developed around this kind of concept of fast times, which is actually about slowing down, right? So there's this moment of hesitation at the beginning and at the end of a process that Method undertakes in the development of any project. And that hesitation is about building criteria so that we can move and design with intent. So we build this really strong methodology that enables us to assess and analyze the clients and really take design and use it as a pressure point to create value in a process. So that was something that we built as a set of services for Robin Hood Foundation. And that's, I should probably say other
We
things about
do a lot more, but I think that's great.
Yeah. And Susan, you're the managing director of real estate at Robin Hood. Do you want to talk just a little bit about Robin Hood and your role in there?
Sure. Robin Hood is New York City's largest poverty-fighting organization. We fund north of 200 of what we think are best-in-class organizations here in New York City that are helping 1.9 million of our neighbors, or 1.6 million of our neighbors who are living below the poverty line. And we bolster our financial grants with a whole suite of services to help make sure these organizations, as organizations, are strong. What I focus on is on their real estate. While real estate has nothing to do with what these organizations do every day, it kind of has everything to do with their success. And in a city like New York, it just becomes increasingly challenging and increasingly expensive for them to be able to have the space that they actually need to run great programs. So we partner with great firms like Method to help these organizations stay stably housed.
Yeah, I found some stats. So 1 in 5 New Yorkers lives in poverty. It's more than the entire population of Philadelphia. 1 in 2 New York City students are not considered college ready. And 1 in 6 New Yorkers rely on soup kitchens and food pantries. And 1 in 3 New York City babies are born into poverty. And then last one, 1 in 5 families are in homeless shelters or fleeing domestic violence. And Robin Hood provides 200 of the best nonprofits with financial, real estate, and management support. So they're a really great organization.
Do you want to come on the road for us? That'd be great.
We've written about you in our magazine. The first time I learned about you guys, maybe about 10 years ago, when you were just doing a whole spate of great libraries with schools. And what was great about them is these were like fantastically designed libraries. They would have Myra Kalman, the illustrator, illustrate a room. And it was really a different way of really looking at the library as one of the central parts of the educational process. So a great organization, and 100% of all profits go towards the the organization, right?
We call ourselves 100% charity because 100 cents of every donation goes right back out into the community. Our board pays 100% of expenses, including our salaries, our space, as well as all the event expenses. So one of our taglines is 100% charity.
And what's really interesting, I think, is we don't think of nonprofits as having to be in the fast lane, right? When you think of it, but if you turn that around when you're looking at the urgency of what needs to be solved in the city, we do need fast solutions for this. So we have two projects, I think, the Blue Ridge Labs. Maybe you can talk, and that was a collaboration you guys did. And then I think we have iMentor as well that we're going to talk about. Do you want to maybe talk about first of all, what is Blue Ridge Labs?
So Blue Ridge Labs is a program that Robin Hood took over from one of our board members, I think close to 3 years ago. And it is an incubator, which is very different from the way we typically work. They were housed in space in Brooklyn, and it needed a bit of a makeover after about 12 years in that space. And what they do, it's the intersection between sort of tech and nonprofit. And what they do is incubate groups of teams of folks to try and find tech-based solutions for folks living in poverty. And some of the early projects that have come out are just amazing. And it's been really fun to sort of take a whole different side of our business. This is the first kind of incubator space that we designed. And when we first got permission to do it, these guys were my first phone call going, okay, I have no idea how to design an incubator space. We've got to get in there and figure it out. And oh, by the way, Robin Hood's given us $10 to do it. So
It was 8.
it was 8.
Yeah, it was 8.
And so we really had to do it in a way that was cost efficient and time sensitive because they had so many rounds of programs going through it. So we had, 2 weeks, 2 weeks to actually do the work and $8 to do it. And I'll let you guys talk about the amazing.
Yeah. So
amazing
what are
results
some
you came up with.
of the things that you guys did to achieve the space? Because it looks really good.
One of the things that we start almost every project with is a really deep investigation to the process, which is to say we go through this kind of criteria building moment that is time, money, needs, growth, right? All the things that are going to happen within the space. And so that turns into interviews. I mean, it turns into kind of some of the typical tropes of how you start to structure these things. But with what we found with Robin Hood is that every grantee has a different set of needs, right, and a different budget and a different timeline, and the same challenges, but different solutions and outcomes for it. And this was a particular scenario with the type of work they were doing. I think it literally started out with like a carpeting exercise.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, right? Like when you're working with nonprofits, one of the big things is that you could put a nonprofit in a closet and they'll make it work, right? And because of that, design is always projected to be a luxury, right? It's not. It's a luxury good or it's a luxury service, right? And we have a posture at Method which is really about design doesn't cost, it pays, right? Which sounds cheesy, but it's absolutely an approach that says you have to be opportunistic, you have to be a little bit ruthless about the way that you look at space and you look at the opportunities, and you have to do the work to basically create these. You have to create value for your client, right? So like the projects that you're seeing are built for $40 to $50 a square foot, even though they're 5,000 square feet on the one hand and almost 30,000 square feet on the other hand. And the thing with these projects is that, like we said, we build criteria, but I think one of the keys is that we do it before the traditional process starts. So before a Robin Hood grantee even engages a broker, Method Design is actually working with the client, and we've created a whole pro forma that's quantitative and qualitative, so that when they, loss factor and all the crap that we deal with, right, like as designers, right, that's all been processed already, and we prepared the client to understand, where there's going to be gaps in knowledge, where there's going to be gaps in money, right, and we're ready to go so that we can design with intent. Right, and that's really that's our thing, right? To move fast, you have to start slow. You got to do, what are the criteria, right?
And Susan, you're looking at real estate all over the city, and you're probably feeling a lot of squeeze in terms of where do I find good value for these nonprofits. What's the biggest challenge that you find working with these clients?
The biggest challenge is the disappointment about not being able to give them what they really need and deserve, and to find a way. I say half of our job is about new math, trying to make 2 and 2 equal 6, because it's really what they need. And having great teams around us help us get as close to 6 as possible. Is their budgets and government contracts and certainty of long-term funding just don't match making real estate decisions. When I first heard this topic, I thought, well, gee, this has nothing to do with what we do all day long, but it actually has so much to do. As I thought about it a little more, there's so many tricks and techniques that we can, things that were designed for startup or for the tech sector, that we can then bring in and import where it makes sense. And we've been able to borrow a lot of those things in ways that have really served our nonprofits.
What would be
well.
What would be one example of that?
So certainly the furniture, which used to have lead times in the number of months that now have number of days, and price points that come down from there, and also can be moved from space to space in an efficient way, whereas sort of more traditional furniture is very expensive to try and break down and move. That's been kind of a huge win for us.
And we had that question about the 5 to 10 year idea of leasing or 1 to 3 with startups. What are we seeing in the nonprofit sector?
We're seeing a real desire for stability for 5 to 10 years, because executive directors want to focus on running their business, on fundraising and improving their programs, and not spending every day worried about their real estate, but not having the certainty with government contracts that go quite that long.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're seeing is more and more opportunities to do short-term leasing, which I'm finding a very, very new, given the sort of startup in tech. Landlords are catering to that, which also works well with extension rights, so that they can stay if everything works according to plan. But it's very hard to make a 10-year decision as a fiduciary when you only have certainty of funding for 3 years or 4
Right.
years for certain.
And then you,
With the tech startups, if I can just jump in, what we see in our tech startup clients is that, like the last group said, they don't even know 12 months out. I might be 50, but I could be 300. So I have to find a space around that,
Right.
right? And with our with the Robert clients, it's the opposite. Is I'm 5, and I might want to go to 7, or I'm 50 and I might want to get to 75, but I might get all my funding cut with the next political cycle.
right.
Right. So it's the same, but same problem, but from the opposite perspective.
And then I'm assuming so many of these groups are community-based, meaning maybe location-based. And how do you deal with the issue of gentrification in many of these neighborhoods and communities?
We pound the pavement.
Yeah.
Neighborhoods are changing faster than I've certainly ever seen, and a lot of our groups, actually, their government funding requires them to be in certain community boards or within certain zip codes or in certain neighborhoods, and it is a real challenge to keep them there, because they still have their client base there. A lot of the public housing is still there, so their clients and the needs for their services have not changed, but the real estate is changing so fast underneath them. It's shocking.
And we're seeing, for example, in the design community, a lot of architecture firms are moving down to Wall Street because the rent is cheap down there, supposedly. But also nonprofits are moving there, right?
Tons of our groups where they have the ability to move anywhere are moving to Lower Manhattan, because yes, the rents are cheaper and the transportation is fantastic. So where they're client-based and they're going everywhere in the city during a day, but they need to come back to their home base, Lower Manhattan is fantastic. So it feels like Lower Manhattan is turning into a nonprofit center, which is great.
Method Design and iMentor are on Wall Street. So,
Okay, good. We have time for one question. This time maybe we'll go somewhere in the back. Maybe anyone? Okay, we'll move to the front. Okay, lady over there in the green.
Yeah, we don't look at anything if we can't do it for less than 50 a square foot for full construction. So we have a stable of contractors that, I think this is the post part of the design process, which is Reese and I create a framework with the team, and then we sit with the contractors, and then we look at the classes of materials that accomplish the criteria and the performance, and then we really look at how you accomplish that. And it's really about executing at this very specific calibrated level to nail those numbers. It's not just strong contract relationship, but we're on site every day, right?
And I think the other part of that that's important is to say is that the wall costs the cost of the wall and the materials that go on it, right? And the value that we bring to it, which most of these people see as luxury, is the consideration of it and the spatial ramifications and the organization lets them do their operation and their community outreach better, right? So the budget is the budget, and we bring value to the organization and the thinking and the initiation of it, all the way through the execution of it.
And that starts with good space, right? It's not just like fancy materials or wood on the walls or like reclaimed wood or the crap that we all do, right? It's really about dynamic space, right? It's space that's either flexible or absolute or whatever it needs to be to like be calibrated. That's really what we spend a lot of time on in the office, is
can I
that dynamic space component.
Can I share the first half of the iMentor story? So when iMentor was thinking about renovating their space, they were taking another suite, they had to integrate it into the space they were in, and they basically moved into the space as is, and it looked like a cross, I'll let you guys tell, but it was sort of a cross between like a bad
It was
80s
like an
singles
80s
bar
advertisement
and it was
company
just
that had
bad.
a fish tank under the stair, like built into the stair.
Literally a big aquarium underneath the stair, the community stair.
It was defunct, and I think it still had dead fish in it. It was all bad. And we just wanted to do a bit of a facelift, the way many people start like a kitchen renovation. Hey, I'll just reface the kitchen cabinets. It'll be terrific. And the next thing you know, they're proposing to demo the entire space for the same budget. And it was a big leap of faith moment early in our relationship, and you guys kept it into that budget, and the result is absolutely stunning. But we thought, well, we'll change the carpet, we'll bury some of the wiring, we'll add some new furniture, it'll be fantastic. And the proposal was to demo, and you guys just did the most amazing job with it.
Great, thank you. Okay, so our third group is collaboration between MKDA and LearnVest. So maybe Stacy, do you want to talk about how you guys got together?
Sure. It's not really a very exciting story, unfortunately, but we were working with Craven, and they sort of called us in, and they said, we have a great project for you, great clients. We think it's the right project for you. We really want you to come check it out. And we did, and we all got along very well.
Okay, and LearnVest, why don't you tell us in 30 seconds what LearnVest is?
Sure. So we're a financial planning company. We offer people affordable, intuitive financial plans that are prepared by financial professionals and offer them digital tools to help them stay on plan. However, we are owned by Northwestern Mutual. We're a wholly owned subsidiary. And so we actually have grown into a role together with Stacy of becoming the digital innovation hub for Northwestern Mutual.
And how big are your offices, or maybe have you guys grown over the collaboration?
Yeah, so we started off with the first space, and then we took the second space upstairs. So both floors are, I believe, around like 15,000, 17,000 square feet. And
this is over a period of how long?
Not very long.
Yeah, like 2 years.
Yeah,
I think
fast
we
times.
built both. Yeah.
It was 13 months from the first
Okay.
move-in to the second move-in on the second floor. We had projected that first floor would last us 2 years, and in about 3 or 4 months, we realized that we were going to explosively grow out of it really, really quick. And we're like, actually, can you come back and do another floor?
Okay, and where are we now? Is it time tilled? Are you going to expand again, or are we looking at another floor?
We're currently trying to remove some lounge space that
Okay.
they don't want to remove and
Right.
add some more desks that
Okay.
we already planned.
So let's look at the space itself. So what are some of the things that you did in such a short period of time?
Well, actually, I would say this project really did have, I guess I can say, a normal timeline. It was more about, needing the second space right away and realizing that the first space that we built, they really needed more desks and more conference rooms. So it was really a learning experience in that sense.
Mhm.
So the second space, we knew that they would need more people based on the first space. So we planned for that future. Basically, it's like not even a year. I think you guys really needed the more desks right when they moved in, but they wanted the cozy space around. So now we're kind of trying to figure that out.
I think where things were pivoting were because we engaged with MKDA when we were transforming into this digitally driven arm of Northwestern Mutual. And so we were integrating our companies in a very absolute sense, but also doing it through our space and through the collaborations that would enable us to have with our parent company. And so there were a lot of pivots in terms of the programmatic needs that we had for the space, where in the first floor that we did together, it was very much about like get the people in, have the formal boardroom and try and kind of be a little bit grown up that way. And then we actually pulled back for the next floor. And we're like, actually, we need to reclaim some of our startup-iness and have open spaces and a game room and a whiskey bar and things that had been part of our DNA when we were smaller and in our scrappy little office space. It was probably $4.50 compared to the $8 that we were talking about before, and finding that medium point to help bridge cultures and working styles.
And do you also have the kind of impact of the mothership of Northwestern Mutual kind of dictating, I don't know, company style or,
Not the company style at all. I mean,
is there a company style at Northwestern Mutual?
Yeah, I mean, they just built this incredible 33-floor tower in Milwaukee where they're headquartered. And so we were actually, we were like the shiny new object for a few minutes, and then the tower opened, and then we got our next space. And so it's actually this wonderful, like everybody's getting this beautiful environment to actually bridge both. So we're getting to have, a real proper kitchen with like dishwashers and, dishwashers that work, bathrooms with doors and other exciting amenities like that. Northwestern Mutual is getting like puzzles and cornhole and like things to make them, and they can wear jeans there now with the new space. So we're actually bridging a lot of things to make the two campuses come together more.
And I'm assuming it's an open office?
Totally open. Even our CEO, our C-suite, they don't have offices.
Okay. One of the things that I'm seeing, the number one complaint in open offices is noise, and how do you deal with that? And then the second thing I'm seeing is we need more smaller conference rooms. Are you even the two conference rooms for two people? Did you see a change? What are you seeing now in terms of the newest iteration on the second floor upstairs that you're adding that you didn't have on the first floor?
Yes and yes. We had to add a lot more of those sort of smaller 2 or 3 person rooms to have private conversations. Yes. Oh, there you can see into one of them.
That's me in that room.
Yes. Oh. We let Stacy come and squat whenever she wants to, so that we can enable people to have those private conversations that you need to have, which are a lot harder in the open office plan. And also sometimes, particularly our executive have needs to be able to host people. So the second floor that we added in with them, we had a lot more of those smaller rooms.
Yeah, we did actually, and that was kind of a challenge because we were adding in a staircase to connect the 2 floors, so we were removing space essentially. We actually removed a conference room on the first floor, which you could see right there. So we had to remove that to create the stair, and then we lost space upstairs. So we were really trying to really pile in as many rooms as possible, and add in also the outside lounge space and the outside workspace and the cafe and things like that.
So, Abigail, what are you doing now? Now you're getting into almost like a third floor. How do you, obviously there's, I guess the notion that you are going to expand probably. How do you guys design for that? How do you guys, are you thinking of 5 years from now, or is it still like a year by year startup mentality?
So I think in certain ways we are still thinking in that startup mentality. We couldn't have predicted that we would grow so quickly to need the second floor, and then we're like, all right, this is going to stop. There's not going to need to be that kind of growth. And yet here we are again. My team has spilled out into additional areas because we've been hiring so fast. So I think we're trying to get past thinking in a 2-year time frame that was always gone in 4 months and get to a more like 3 to 5-year plan, which is new territory for us. Northwestern Mutual is very used to it, and so they're giving us great support and being like, no, you can do this. And we're like, we're a startup. We don't know how to do this. And we're kind of finding our way in the middle with their help.
And what do people from headquarters think of your space or of you people?
They love it. It's so awesome. They've started hosting, board meetings in New York, in the New York campus. We have our sales force come and visit when we do our conference in New York, and we do special events there, which is fantastic. So they've been incredibly supportive and incredibly generous. And even sometimes when we're like, we don't know if, we're a startup, we don't spend money like that, they're like, go ahead, do it. And it's fantastic. It's been the right decision every time.
And then do you, it's a sign too that they're using your space. So that's extra people using your space. Are you guys using like temporary spaces, like WeWork spaces, as part of the solution to dealing with a kind of flexible?
We did. We had to get a temporary co-working space on the 9th floor for a little bit while we were waiting for the 2nd floor to happen. And I think we're likely going to have to do that for a little bit again.
Yeah. So it's part of increasingly becoming part of the process.
It seems to be.
What's the biggest challenge in designing on these very short lead times? I mean, it seems like what I'm hearing is you finish the space and you're happy for a week or two, and then there's another call coming going, we need more space. Am I right on that?
It's more like in the middle of designing, you're kind of like, oh, we need to fit 50 more desks here, and obviously CFOs can't do that, or
Right.
whatever. So they're constantly looking for more floors in the building, essentially, and if they can. If not, they either take a co-working space or work from home, or how many people did you have on your team when we started?
When I started working with her, there were 6 designers and 1 researcher. We just had our 60th employee start this week, so that's
Just on her team.
Just on my team. So that's in 2.5 years, roughly 8-fold growth.
Right, which is tremendous.
Which is a lot.
I'm guessing too with like Float Studio and with Method and with you guys, are you starting to sort of design for startups where you're like building in that factor that these guys are going to expand, like be very positive about it?
Yeah,
in some way.
Really, in a similar way, the best way to do it is to design soft seating areas that you can remove. And what we actually did for LearnVest is in their cafe area, we have an entire lounge area outside of it, which is planned for that. And we already put in the core drills for the desks and everything like that to just make it like a plug-and-play solution for them.
Right.
But the really cool thing about that space was it actually, in the way it was designed, helped address some of the challenges that we have as we were scaling, which was that the teams being on different floors and sometimes having their leaders in Milwaukee or New York weren't collaborating as closely as we once had when we were a teeny tiny startup and sort of sitting on each other's laps. But this cafe space with the soft seating has become an epicenter where you'll have the designer sitting on a couch next to the engineer, sitting next to the product person, and they've really coalesced around these sort of micro working areas that are less formal. And it's brought us, I would say, back to our culture of a startup, but like in the context of this incredibly luxurious, beautiful space.
Yeah, I think we used to see you'd have the core working space and then you had amenities, but now we're seeing amenities being just as importantly used as the kind of desking system that we used to. Yeah. Questions from the audience? We have time for, I get the one finger. Okay. It's a great question.
So with LearnVest, they're actually amazing at all of that employee stuff. So I think when we started more the 2nd floor, they did a sort of a survey, and they took all the information from all of their employees, put it into a box, and sort of sorted out what was real and what was not really important. And they came to us, and really this 2 spaces, the images are just of the second floor. The third floor, we don't have them yet, but the 2 spaces look very similar. All the finishes are the same. We just really needed more meeting spaces and more loungy spaces, a bigger cafe, and it was really more things like that your employees wanted.
Yeah, I mean, so we set up, we made use of an employee committee we call them the Breakfast Club, and they get together, they have these breakfasts, and they're really good about representing what they want out of something, and then we had them do sort of regular readouts for us who were working on the space with MKDA. They were very responsive. I mean, I feel like we nailed some of the stuff when we got to the 3rd floor, that we pivoted even, we went back on the 2nd floor, and we're like, actually, we learned some things from that, like we changed our conference room tables based on employee feedback. We did a quick pivot on our whiteboards based on employee feedback. And I think that people really bought into the process because we did those quick pivots together, that they felt like heard.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. We're going to do the last group now, group number 4. Daanish Kurani is an architect, a design firm that has done actually a number of really education-driven kind of design solutions. Maybe can you talk about some of the work that you're doing before we get to actually a Google code next?
Yeah, so as Paul mentioned, Kurani, we specialize in learning spaces. We've done schools and learning centers all over the world, from elementary school kids up to adult education. For Google, we've done a number of projects with their initiatives on education. We just finished a school in India recently that is focused on happiness and student character and personality more than grades. We've done
the Khan schools.
We did for Khan Academy, the online learning app. We actually built a physical high school for them in Mountain View, just downstairs from where all the coders work. We've done learning spaces for the Reset Foundation. They take incarcerated young men out of the prison system, give them an education. We actually converted an old barn into their campus for that in Berkeley. So.
And then Peter Gay Clark, you're the community manager at Google Code Next. Can you just talk a little bit, because I'm sure not a lot of people know what is it a school or an educational?
We are not a school.
Okay, so what so I should have Googled that, but I apologize. I used Yahoo.
That was so important for us. We are not a school, Daanish.
Okay, what do we call it?
We're an innovative learning space.
Okay.
About 2.5 years ago, there were a number of Google leaders who felt like they could do more on the side of corporate social responsibility. I'm sure you guys had seen the numbers in the tech industry, and there are not a lot of Black and Latinos in tech. So they brought a few folks on board, and there were a number of initiatives that were started. CodeNext was just one of them. And they basically wanted to create a program or initiative that can cultivate more Black and Latino computer scientists. And so, I came on board about 2.5 years ago. There's a number of folks that came on board, and we were tasked with designing this experience, this pathway for them. And immediately we knew we needed an innovative learning space. We didn't want this space to mimic a school. We wanted it to be a space that was accessible, that was inspiring, where they can come and feel confident. And so we started researching innovative designers for learning spaces, and to our luck and Daanish's hard work, his name popped up at the top of the list.
Only then did I know their search engine actually worked.
So you worked on 2 spaces with them, or?
We're now working on our 4th space.
Okay.
So this is one of their pipeline programs for 8th through 12th graders. We've done a university program space for them as well.
And so this space that we're looking at is in Oakland, right? I think I remember you telling me it was a really short lead time, right?
So this one, we actually slowed down in the process. Again, at the beginning of every process that we do, it's critical for us to understand not only what their educational philosophy is, but who are the kids coming to the space, what are the coaches, and do a deep dive in their philosophy. They had so many things that were special about their program that would actually, as Peter said, make it accessible, make it not like a traditional school, right?
So one thing, the space is in a kind of it's like a retail storefront, right?
Yeah.
It's not on a campus, an educational campus.
Exactly, and we've done projects on their main campus, but this one is in a retail storefront. Right next door is like a Metro PCS and a Subway restaurant and a jewelry store. And this idea of fast times, like you can't always wait for a school building or an educational facility to get built. Education's so important. You got to be able to do it anywhere, anytime. And so the challenge of how do you take a 1,400 square foot retail storefront and turn it into an innovation lab?
So what are some of the things that students would see when they come to this space, or what would they experience? Can you take us through, I mean, it's such a vibrant and colorful space. What's happening?
Yeah, so the way the program was designed is we wanted the kids to be able to come to the space and be inspired, to see themselves as engineers, and just to feel confident that they can build and create anything. So a lot of the designs, and we were working with a small space too, it was 1,400 square feet. And we were running 2 cohorts of kids. So at any given time, we had about 40 kids in this space. So we needed a space that was really modular, and we were able to move things around and use it for multiple purposes. And then if you can notice on the walls, there are a lot of inspiring, there are actors, artists, and athletes that there was some kind of convergence with tech, so they can see themselves and see that tech is everywhere. On the walls, we also wanted to take this open approach where they can see, a video game, but know what's happening underneath and be able to take things apart.
Yeah, so for example, one of the things that CodeNext really cared about was a constructionist learning model, right? Kids should learn by doing and making and understand the world by physically engaging with it. So a lot of the details here, in the windows, all the screws are exposed. You see the barn doors right there. They're transparent, right? They're clear doors that actually acoustically seal. You see the structure inside. The storage is made out of milk crates. We wanted them to see, right, the Beats headphones here on the left. We took apart a set of headphones, displayed them so you could really see the anatomy of, how things are built, and get kids in that mindset of, hey, the physical world around me, it didn't just appear. We, physically built this, and women physically built this, right? And so
Thank you, Daanish. Thank you.
Yeah. And so that was really important. And as Peter mentioned, this notion of inspiring them. A lot of these kids coming from underserved communities, they've only seen the media's images of who's in tech, right? So they see Elon Musk and Bill Gates. So what we did was really try to show them people that look like them, that came from their communities, right? Guillermo Gonzalez is Hispanic inventor who created colored television, right? Melba Roy, this was actually serendipity, like a few months before the movie Hidden Figures came out. We, Peter and her team had researched all these African-American women who worked at NASA, in the 50s and 60s, and so Melba Roy's on the wall. So really, when these kids coming out of these communities, a lot of times, you guys talked about it, that they all want to be the next athlete or musician. So it's great to be LeBron James and Jay-Z, but how do we make it cool to also be a scientist, right? How do we make that seem fun, that seem like a great thing that they'd want to do?
And Peter Gay, in your previous life, in a way, you spearheaded the launch and co-led the New York chapter of Black Girls Code. So how are we making sure that we're starting these programs, but then making sure that the kids are actually going to end up being coders and engineers and designers?
Yeah, that was super important to us when we started this initiative, and that's one of the reasons why I came on board. The idea is that we want to see all the kids through college and hopefully college graduation. So it's not just a one-off experience or one-off workshop. Some of these kids have a 2-year commitment with us where they're with us every Saturday from 9 to 4, learning about coding, about leadership, about engineering, about design. So it's a long-term commitment.
Yeah, I mean, even a segue in the design world, when we look at the furniture designers, if you look at the major companies, companies like Knoll and Herman Miller only had 10% of women designers. DWRs, maybe like 25%. There are more women going into industrial design programs now than men, but there are less women coming out as industrial designers. So it really is a challenge, I think, when we try and look at really the big picture of how do we accomplish this. We're at 4 spaces now, learning spaces, or that you've designed 4 of them.
For Google, we've done this Code Next Lab here in Oakland. We did the next level up in their pipeline programs is called Howard West. It was a partnership with Howard University and Google, which they just announced they're also expanding to other HBCUs. So we did that space on the mothership, as they call it, the main Google campus. That one was super fast. That was 3-week design build, about 4,000 square feet. So. That was us getting out there, rolling up our sleeves, running to Home Depot every day, and getting stuff built. And so we've done that. We just did a space for where they educate all new Google employees. We're working on the campus for the next Howard West, which is an expansion of that same program. So all ages, from 8th grade up to adults. Yeah.
Now, but are we losing something in designing for fast times? Because 3 weeks is, it's just, what can you do in 3 weeks, right? But is there a way, is startup culture demanding this, just as we're seeing with many of these companies, the leases, all of this, we're getting this pressure that we want things faster, we demand them faster, and as a client, they can say, well, I want this faster, I'll go to someone else. How do we deal with this issue of designing for faster times?
I think part of it is, them being such an innovative company, they iterate, right? So when you have a great idea, you put pen to paper, right? And you put stuff on the walls, and you get walls up, and you get furniture in the space and paint and whatever you need to do. But
so in other words,
program started, learn from that. Right?
You can make mistakes.
You can make mistakes, right? You don't have a year to wait, because that's 1 year of educating children that you could have been doing, right? And so you gotta get it up fast.
And so what are you learning from a design point of view in designing these spaces? Let's say both from the client and from the designer point of view. Client first?
There was just so much to learn. I think Daanish introduced us to a new way of thinking. I think he brought a lot of empathy to the work. He was very thoughtful. He wanted to know the demographics of our kids, where they come from, how they would be using the space, all of the users. And then as he started presenting us with different designs, we had thoughtful conversations around the implications of each of those designs. So that was a learning experience from us. Google has their own real estate team, but not many folks at Google are experienced with innovative learning spaces, and we had a lot of customization that we needed to build into our space. So that really, really helped.
And then, why don't you want to answer that part from the design point of view?
Yeah, I think for us, unlike when you're doing commercial spaces and just office spaces, from one company to the next, of course, there's nuance in how the company works. But when you talk about education and their viewpoint on how to educate children and inspire children, that's so different from one educator to the next that you really have to nail that. You really have to understand, for example, when we did schools here in New York City, we were shadowing students, basically living with them. Like we were from 8 a.m. in the morning till 9 p.m. at night, all day long. Even when they're dropping siblings off to school, to understand, hey, what are the challenges that this student faces? What is their background? Where are they coming from? So I think, even though you have to go fast, you've got to go deep. You have to understand those nuanced differences, because that makes the difference between someone feeling engaged and inspired and feeling like they can access the knowledge and information versus feeling like an outsider.
So with all this information that you're learning from, let's say, prototyping your product, the spaces, are you thinking about rolling that out in some way from a design point of view?
Yeah, I mean, we, of course, from every project to the next, you're learning, as would any firm. And we're starting to now think about, we've done a series of projects where it's saying, look, this is what exceptional learning spaces should look like. Now, how do we bring this to the masses, right? So we've worked with the Khan Academies and the Googles, and we've been able to do these great spaces. How do you package this? How do you prototype this? How do you create something that every school across the country can afford, not only from a cost perspective, but also time? And making it
So in other
super
words,
accessible.
if I'm a school and finally I want to have a maker lab, there's an easy way to, not an easy way to do it, but there is an easier way to do it.
Yeah, we've developed this concept called Schoolbox, which makes it really easy for them to pick and choose the types of spaces that they want, and then be able to customize within that. And it's all designed, obviously, by experts in learning spaces and collaborations with other educators, so they know when they're getting that this is optimized for learning.
And what about feedback from the students? How do you measure that or take that into account for the next iteration of a space?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we work with all levels of kids, we're not looking just for the kids that are A students and so forth. So we actually have students in our program who have maybe some learning issues, right? So what we found is that maybe in their school, they may have a scribe or may have someone helping them, but in our space, they don't have any of that. So they're able to bring their whole selves and function and learn and be creative. So that's something that we...
Great. Time for one question. And I'm going to try the back again. They like to drink, I see. So I'm going to go to the, I'm going to go to the front. Okay, we have one here. Yeah, so basically, how do you fit into the Google brand, the overall Google brand? I guess that's the simple way of doing that, asking that.
From a design perspective,
Both,
I know,
yeah.
we did a couple of things. Obviously, you can see we took the Google color palette, right, their logo colors, and did a slight offset of that, and made it a bit more kid-friendly, let's say. The things that Google cares about, so for example, in their offices, I forget what the rule is, no employee should ever be more than 150 feet away from food, right? So they have...
Very true.
Yeah, and so they have kitchens and micro kitchens and cafeterias everywhere, and so for the kids, making sure that they had those same types of amenities, the same vibe that you would get out of Google.
We could have Food 52 move next door to Google, and they can work with the Robin Hood Foundation, solving a lot of problems. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up, yeah? Or do we have room for? We have room for one more question. Overall, takeaway. Okay, we have one.
Yeah, I guess in terms of fast design and with startups growing at a rate that is just exponential or not at all, how do design firms start to ramp up, or how does their culture change in order to respond to crazy amount of need in terms of producing product and or dry spots? Like, is everybody seeing a shift in the firm culture as they're seeing a shift in how you're designing plans?
Do one of the designers want to chime in? Okay, Nina, I have give you my microphone.
I think that for us, one thing that has helped that is not relying solely on large-scale projects. Everybody knows that a big 10, 20, 30, 40,000 upward space, that process of procuring that client and getting a signed contract can be a very, very lengthy one. So the fact that we're willing to work with startups at all stages allows a pretty comfortable infill and steady stream of work. So it's a business development strategy, it builds relationships for us, but it also helps those major dry spells that can come about for a firm when you're waiting for the multi-million-dollar project that's going to essentially keep you afloat for a couple of years.
So I just want to I want to thank all the panelists here. They were fantastic. I want you to support the organizations that are here. The designers have been fantastic too, and you can continue the conversation with the Poppin Food and Drink. Great, thank you.